Welcome to Man About Danville with Logan H. Gurman, a podcast for Danville, Kentucky and beyond. Conversations with friends, and you get to listen. Brought to you by the Logan Company, a commercial and residential real estate brokerage for Danville and Central Kentucky. 80% Danville-centric, 20% eccentric.
Good morning, Danville, Kentucky. You're listening to Man About Danville. I am, of course, Logan H. Gurman, the Man About Danville himself. This is the leading podcast, the most influential podcast, the fastest growing podcast for Danville, Boyle County, and the surrounding region of Central Kentucky. Thank you very much for joining us, whether you are in your car, on a commute, on a road trip, on vacation, by the pool, at work, at the gym, on a run, on a walk, or mowing your yard, or on your tractor. Appreciate your listening. I consider it a real honor and privilege that you choose to spend part of your day with me. This just in, my marketing department tells me that we are blowing up in Florence, Alabama. So as Keith Jackson would say, whoa, Nelly, we've got a barn burner in northern Alabama. So thanks especially to everyone down there listening. If you enjoy this podcast, I hope you would consider sharing it. Wherever you listen, there should be a little share button. If you would hit that button and post it to the social media platform of your choosing, I'd appreciate it. Be sure to tag me so I can see it and thank you personally. This episode, I talked to Liz Morris, who's a jockey agent with two jockeys riding in tomorrow's Kentucky Derby. It was so kind of her to find a few minutes to take the time to talk with me with everything she has going on. We recorded this episode last week. Since the time we recorded it, however, she has found a mount for her other jockey client, Gabe Saez. So she has two jockeys who are riding in the Derby tomorrow. Gabe Saez will be riding Mr. Big News, and Adam Bachetta will be riding Enforceable. So we don't talk a whole lot about Gabe in the episode because at the time we recorded, he didn't have a mount. He does now, so we want to wish the best of luck to both those jockeys in the race on Saturday. I am joined today on Derby Eve by Liz Morris. Liz is a jockey agent, and she is one of the very few women in that field, and she is only the second female jockey agent to have a client who's riding in the Derby. And Liz, who's your jockey tomorrow?
So my jockey that I have riding the Kentucky Derby is Adam Bachetta. He's a jockey that I got 3 years ago through a connection friend of mine named Joe Sharp is a trainer. And he introduced me to Adam Bachetta. And ever since then, Adam's come over to the United States and has been exceptionally successful. And he's only been here for 3 years. So it's very unprecedented for him to have a mount in the Derby, especially since he is from Europe. Majority of his career, he's ridden on the grass and not the dirt. So it's a huge success for him to be able to have his first mount in the Kentucky Derby.
Awesome. So he's a first-time jockey in the Derby. And have you ever had a jockey of yours ride in the Derby?
I have not. I've only been on the Kentucky circuit for the last 3.5 years. So this is also a success for me as well to finally have a mount in the Kentucky Derby. It's difficult to get mounts in the Derby, and then it's difficult to win the Derby. So, it's everybody's goal and dream to have the opportunity just to get their jockey in the Derby and then let alone to win the Derby. That's it's a dream come true, something like that. So, all right,
Liz, you grew up in Texas. How did you come about landing this particular job as a jockey's agent?
Oh, wow, that's a long story.
We've got plenty of time. This is a long format show.
I always knew as a child that I wanted to work with animals. I always was fascinated with animal cognition. As a very young age, I always knew that that's the road that I was going to go down in some sort of way. I originally, funny to mention, I thought I was going to be a Shamu trainer. I thought I was going to work for SeaWorld and train Shamu. And, a really good friend of mine growing up his name was Mark McHugh. He was the head Shamu trainer of San Antonio, Texas. And I used to spend my summers there with him and all the trainers. And they knew I wanted to be a trainer. So they would let me interact with the whales quite often. I was the first kid to ever sit on Shamu's back at SeaWorld of Texas as a test child, to pull a child out of the crowd and see how Shamu reacted during a show. So I've always had a fascination with interacting with animals, with large animals particularly. I was always fascinated with that. And then as I got older, I learned a little bit about, orcas in captivity, not necessarily the best thing. And, I'm always being such an animal activist, I'm always leaning towards doing what's right by the animal. So I decided not to be a marine biologist, and I decided to go down the road to be a large animal veterinarian for equine. I went to school for just that, and I worked for Retama Equine Hospital, which was the third largest equine hospital at the time in San Antonio, Texas. And by Retama Park, which is a racetrack in San Antonio, Texas, is Retama Equine Hospital. So we used to go to the backside a lot for the veterinarian I was working for, and we used to do work on the backside. And I got introduced to racing that way. And I was just fascinated from day one. I'm like, you know what? I've been an athlete since I was very, very young. It's just natural for me, athleticism. And I'm like, I love animal cognition. I'm like, wow, I can combine the two. I could be a jockey. I'm like, why? Because what I've learned working in a large animal vet clinic is you have no life. And you basically, you live for your job. And I just didn't think that was the route I really wanted to go. And I decided I decided that I was going to be a jockey instead. So I rode from 2003 to 2007. And then when I decided to retire, I decided to eat again because I I'd have to answer to a scale every single day. And no, that gets old after a while. I was very realistic in the aspect of my future was not going to be as a jockey because it was just really hard at the time when I was riding for females to get the opportunity that the males had, even though I was very successful as a jockey in the short stint that I rode. But all the jockeys that I used to ride with used to come back to the room and say, Liz, you should be a jockey agent. You should be a jockey agent. Why don't you retire from riding and take my book? And I said, you know what? I think I will be a jockey agent at some point. I'm just not ready to retire yet. But when I am ready, I'll look into it and I'll let you know. So it was just a natural transition for me to go from being a jockey to a jockey agent because as a female jockey, I used to have to hustle hard myself to get the mounts that I had. I had to work harder than the boys to get the opportunity. And it made me a good agent. I'm very familiar with watching a race because I know what a jockey goes through. I understand their perspective because I've been in the irons before, which is very valuable for a rider as far as communicating with his agent. I know how to watch a race. I understand what happens in the races, and I'm very good at charting horses. I understand pedigrees. I'm very fascinated with pedigrees, and I'm very knowledgeable with pedigrees. So you put all of that into play, then it was just a natural transition for me to be a jockey agent. And so that's what I've done from 2007 to now.
Did you grow up riding horses?
I did not. I did not grow up, well, kind of, sort of. I owned a Shetland pony when I was really, really little.
That's a little different than a thoroughbred.
Exactly. And that's basically, I grew up around a Shetland pony and playing around in nature. I thought I was at cowboys and Indians, playing out in the woods and stuff like that. But I never really nobody in my family had a background in racing, which made it even more difficult for me to get involved in racing because 98%, maybe 99% of the people that are in racing have some sort of involvement of somewhere through their family was a trainer or their dad was a jockey and then they ended up going down a different route. There was somebody in their family that has something to do with racing. There was nobody in my family that had anything to do with racing. And I was a woman in a male-dominated industry. So I just had a vision and a dream and believed in myself and worked really hard to get the opportunities that I did. Even before I was riding races, I worked for the right people. But yes, I'm very grateful and I'm very fortunate that I was able to work for Hall of Fame trainer Steve Asmussen early on in my career prior to being a jockey. He gave me a great foundation. He's an excellent horseman, phenomenal trainer. And that allowed me to grow and get a really good foundation. I mean, I started from the bottom up. And we're talking about, I'd clean stalls, I'd hot walk horses, I would do payroll, I would, help with veterinarian work, I would groom horses if horses needed to be groomed. I'd climb up in semi trucks full of straw and hay and pull that out. And, Steve taught me so many major fundamentals of racing and to appreciate all aspects of what everybody does on the backside to get to the winner's circle. And I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to work for him. I learned a lot. And my riding skills as an exercise rider, because I exercised horses for him before becoming a jockey, and I obtained a certain skill set as well from him because Steve's demands excellence. If you don't work for a guy like Steve Asmussen, if you don't demand excellence for yourself. And so it was like kind of like going through boot camp. And I'm very, very lucky and fortunate I had that foundation going into racing. And I think that helped me to be the person I am today.
So after you were a jockey yourself, you became a jockey's agent. And a normal sports agent would handle a handful of, let's say, running backs or football players or quarterbacks, and they will help those guys sign 3-year or 5-year contracts with a team. And then however many years hence, they'll help them renegotiate or move teams. I'm guessing that's a little different for a jockey's agent.
Absolutely. I wish I could have like multiple riders, but in our industry, we're only allowed to have 2 jockeys. So every jurisdiction is different, but majority of the jurisdictions overall, you can only have 2 jockeys, meaning that you can have 2 journeymen, which are 2 experienced riders who have been riding for over a year, and there's a very few jurisdictions and states to this date that allow you to have 3, which would be 2 journeymen and an apprentice. So an apprentice is a jockey that it's his first year of riding races, and he's still learning. So I think there's maybe, don't quote me on this, I'm not quite up to date with it, but I think there's only maybe 2 states that allow 2 journeymen and an apprentice, but majority of the rest of the jurisdictions throughout North America only allow you to have 2 jockeys. Meaning you can either have 2 journeymens or 2 journeymens and an apprentice.
All right. So you handle 2 athletes.
Yes, I handle 2.
And then how many do each of those guys work with multiple owners and multiple horses and multiple tracks in multiple states?
Well, we're kind of on a circuit here. I've been very blessed and very fortunate to be on the Kentucky circuit because it's kind of considered one of the elite circuits of racing currently in North America. So we are in Kentucky 6 months out of the year, and then 5 months out of the year, we are in New Orleans. So our circuit, this is how it works. In the Kentucky circuit, you have Churchill Downs, you have Keeneland Racecourse, you have Ellis Park, and you have Kentucky Downs. And then, so those are the 4 tracks. And then you have Turfway Park in the winter, but we don't go to Turfway Park in the winter. We go where our trainers go, which for me is New Orleans. So I'm there for 5 months out of the year in New Orleans for that particular meet. New Orleans is normally from November to the end of March. A lot of trainers at Churchill Downs and on this Kentucky circuit, they will either go majority of them go to either New Orleans or they go to Gulfstream in the winter. So that's kind of like where our circuit is. We do ship in to other states to ride stake races. Like, for example, if COVID wasn't happening right now, my jocks would have shipped into Saratoga for the boutique meet of Saratoga, and they would have ridden in the Whitney. I had a horse run in the Whitney by my standards that my jockey Gabe Saez rides. And that horse ran second in the Whitney. And then I would have been able to ship in to Saratoga as well with Adam to win a stake race on Toby's Heart. She won as well. So, but because of COVID, I was told the governor of New York was not going to let out-of-state riders ship in. So this year we've been a lot more limited on where we go and ship in to ride stake races. Like, for example, tomorrow I have a horse, Mr. Money, that's a horse that I've stuck with the whole entire time. And he happens to be running at Charlestown racetrack. So I can't go because they're only allowing local riders to ride at Charlestown. The New York riders that are coming in and the California riders that are coming in for Derby week, I'm really happy that they get the opportunity to come in and ride their horses that they work so hard to get, because a lot of us we don't have the opportunity to ship out.
All right. So this is your first Derby as a professional.
Yes, it's my first time to have a jockey in the Derby as a professional jockey's agent. Yes.
What has that experience been like for you this first go round?
It's been great. I'm really happy for my rider. I'm really happy for my rider. He's come a long ways. To be a jockey that's, like I said, who's come from England, has lightly raced and never really raced on the dirt until he got to North America, primarily poly track and turf races in Europe. And he was successful in Europe prior to me getting him. And when he came to the United States, we happened to get really lucky. We were second in the standings at Fairgrounds his first meet. We almost won the title. We only lost the title by 1 win, and it came down to a the last day of racing in New Orleans at Fairgrounds, and we were tied all the way up until like maybe it was 11. I think it was 11 race card, and we were tied up to the 9th race. So it was a battle for leading rider, and that was his first time ever riding in North America track, and for him to almost win the title that first year is pretty amazing. And we came back the second year and we won the title by 5. So that was pretty exciting. So to see him have an opportunity to ride in the Derby, it makes me so happy because he deserves it. He's worked really hard to be where he is today. And just to watch him grow is just been quite an honor. He's great to work for. But so it's exciting. It's exciting to have a horse in the Derby. And it's exciting to have a horse in the Derby for Mr. Oxley, the owner who owns Enforceable. He owned Monacros when Monacros won the Derby. Both horses have very similar running styles. They both are late closers and both are great horses. And it's just really exciting. A little cool fact about Monacros, when he won the Derby in 2001, he had the second fastest time to Secretariat. So it's pretty exciting. I hope Mr. Oxley gets it done this year. That'd be great. And then Mark Cassey, the trainer who trains Enforceable, amazing horseman, excellent horseman. He's got a great crew that works behind him. David Carroll, his assistant, is superb. David used to train horses himself, so they've got a great team, and we're really fortunate to be a part of it. It's all very exciting.
How is the race going to break for Enforceable to win on Saturday?
Well, I think he's just, like the Derbies, it's tricky, that everybody's keen on getting a position early on in the Derby. And that's one of the things that I love about Enforceable. Like, he doesn't have to be in an early position. He's going to run his race. He's going to break on where he needs to break, and he's going to slowly pick up horses, and he's going to come running at the end. He's a one-dimensional horse, and going the distance and the long stretch of Churchill Downs, and there's some speed in the race, and I think that he's got a great opportunity to win it or get a piece of the pie. I'm very confident with our horse.
Well, this is an unusual year for the Derby. They're not going to be any fans there. That's my understanding. Is that right?
Yes, it's very unfortunate. That's the only thing that I can say that I regret for Adam, because as an ex-jockey, I've never got the opportunity to ride in the Derby. There's only been 6 women ever to even ride in the Derby of the history of the 146 Derbies that we've had in North America. Those 6 women, if you don't mind me mentioning their names, because I like to honor them.
Please do.
It's Patty Cooksey, it's Diane Crump, it's Julie Crone, Rosemary Holmeister, and Rosie Napravnik. Rosie Napravnik ran 5th in the Derby, and that's the closest that a woman's ever got to finishing first in the Derby is Rosie Napravnik. She ran 5th place in the Derby, and she's amazing. I happen to know her personally, and she's an extraordinary horsewoman. And she's retired now. She had a kid, and she's rehabbing horses and from racing. Like, she's taking horses off the track, and she's rehabbing them and teaching them a new skill set, and allowing them to have an opportunity to have another job off the track. So she's giving back to the game that's given to her, and I have deep respect for her for that. And then there's one other female rider that I'm not familiar with and I didn't know, but I know her name. Her name is Andrea Seafelt, and she also rode in the Derby. So those were the 6 girls that got to ride in the Derby thus far. But no girls ever won the Derby, So hopefully that'll happen one day.
And you're only the second female agent to have a jock ride in the Derby, so you could be making a first on Saturday as well.
Absolutely. Michelle, she had a jockey named Bryce Blanc in 2005 that rode in the Derby, but he didn't win it, but he did ride in it. And there hasn't been a female agent since Michelle until me now that's had an opportunity to have a rider to ride the Derby. So I feel very grateful and privileged that the trainers and the owners on this Kentucky circuit, it's a very elite circuit, that have given me the opportunity and the open-mindedness to give me an opportunity to prove myself, that I'm worthy of what I do. And I'm very grateful to everybody that's helped me get to this point.
The race is being held obviously later in the year, when these Derby horses are generally considered pretty young when they break in the Derby. Is a couple of extra months of training and growth going to play a factor in the race?
Well, I mean, I'm no trainer. I'm not going to pretend to be. Every trainer has his own methods of developing their horses, and you do watch trainers develop horses in certain ways, and there's strategy involved. I mean, if you have a horse that you think has the potential to be a Derby horse, there are races that are laid out that these trainers, and their racing managers, they watch these races and they aim their horses for the right spots so that they can accumulate as many derby points as they can. And, you kind of watch where all the horses are running. If you feel like there's one horse that might be potentially, a bit tough to match up with head and head, if there's a different particular race that you can get a derby points in, and if the horse is training well up to that race, you try to avoid that horse so that you can get the derby points in the next stake race while that horse is bouncing back from the stake he just ran in. So there's a lot of strategy involved, a lot. And that's why I have another deep respect for these trainers, because it's not easy to develop these horses into these races. And they're not machines. They're humans like us. They get sick. They get, like any athlete that tries, they get injuries, and, they have to overcome it. Like one of my favorites for the Derby, unfortunately got hurt, prior to me having this Derby mount, which is obviously not my favorite, but, Maxfield. The first time I watched Maxfield for Brendan Walsh, and this would have been Brendan Walsh's first opportunity to have a horse in the Derby. He's a very talented upcoming trainer that's done a very good job for himself. And, I was excited to see him have the opportunity. And unfortunately, he got sidelined with an injury. But this is a horse that gave me goosebumps the first time I watched him run. Literally the hair stood up on my arms. I was like, wow, what an animal. Like this is my Derby pick. And I watched him break his maiden, especially first time. And that gave me goosebumps. And I was already saying, this is my Derby pick. This is a Derby horse. And then he just unfortunately got sidelined from an injury. So trainers put a lot into this, and owners have to have patience too, because like I said, they're not machines. They're living, breathing animals, and it takes patience to get them to where you need to get them.
Are you going to be watching the Derby from the track or from the comfort of your own home this weekend?
Logan, it's funny that you mentioned that, because everybody would just assume that I would go to the Derby every year. This is the 146th running of our Derby this year, and I've only watched one Derby live in person. The rest of them I've watched from the comfort of my home or from the comfort of a friend's home that's having a Derby party. Last year I had a good friend of mine. I have a good friend of mine, Chester Thomas, who had By My Standards in the Derby, which happens to be a horse that my other jockey, Gabriel Saez, which is a phenomenal jockey. So I don't want to just talk about Adam. Gabe Saez is a phenomenal jockey. He's a multiple grade one winning rider. He was in the Derby last year. I didn't have his book at the moment, but we're friends, and I have his book now. And Chester Thomas, the owner of By My Standards, I wanted to support him. So I showed up to the Derby that year to support my friend. But other than that, I like to watch the Derby at home because I get distracted at the Derby. It's a lot of people, and you run into trainers, and you run into owners, and you run into friends that you haven't seen in a while. And naturally, when you run into people you haven't seen in a while, you want to talk and have a conversation, which takes away from me actually watching the horses on the track. And I think I like to honor the horses on the track and have a deep appreciation for the magnificent animals that run on Derby Day. It's not just the Derby. There's other multiple stake races that day too, that there's amazing athletes that run, and I want to honor them and pay attention to the details. And, and it's my job to pay attention to those details because I might be riding one of those horses in the future. So that's part of being an agent, is paying attention to the details of races to see if another rider got a horse in trouble that maybe I rode in the past and I could get back on. So it's my job to pay attention to that. And that's why I watch the majority of my races from home.
Liz, while at home, are you going to wear a big hat?
I might. If I do, I'll send you a picture.
Send me a picture of the hat, because I'm all in it for the hats. I'm a little up in the air what I'm going to with the Labor Day weekend. It's thrown my hat game all into a tizzy. Liz,
I might send Dan a picture of Dan in a hat. I think he might look better in a hat than me.
Well, I have to wear one for preventative purposes these days. I don't want to burn the pate. Liz, okay. Thanks. Your enthusiasm is palpable, even via this Zoom call. I know you're busy beyond belief, and I really appreciate you carving out some time to talk to me and for giving me a rooting interest in this race. I haven't been paying attention, but your enthusiasm is infectious, and I'm excited to watch Adam and Enforceable on Saturday, and I'll be rooting for him, and there may be a wager involved too.
Oh, okay. Well, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Any parting words of wisdom for the race tomorrow?
I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be on your show. I feel honored to be a part of your show. Thank you very much. And I just wish all the horses that are running on Saturday, good health. I just want them to all come back safe, all the jockeys to come back safe, and may the best horse win.
Amen to that. All right. You've got a lot of new fans in the Danville, Boyle County, and surrounding region. Liz Morris, agent to the Jockey Stars, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Logan. You have a lovely day.
Awesome. Thanks. But wait, you know what it's time for? What's up, Danville? This is the part of the podcast where I give you some news you can use in and about the area. Normally, I like to cover items related to sports, the arts in the area, and what's going on with not-for-profits in Danville, Boyle County, and the surrounding area. I am happy to report we have some sports news this week. First of all, BYSA, Boyle Youth Soccer Association, is trying to salvage a fall season. Search for them at BYSA on Facebook. They posted the other day that they should have some information forthcoming. That's such a worthwhile way to get your kids involved in a sport and outdoors and running around. It's wonderful. I coached there for several years. That's BYSA, Boyle Youth Soccer Association on Facebook. Speaking of soccer, Boyle County has both the women's and men's team playing on September the 8th. That's a Tuesday night. Brian Deem and the women's team and my friend and first-year coach Jeremy Carlson and the boys will be playing later in the evening. So if you want to check out a soccer game, they'll be having one. Don't know if they're going to allow folks in the stands. Probably not a whole lot. That reminds me, football coming up next weekend on September the 11th. Gosh, I can't say that date without getting a lump in my throat, but the Boyle County football team kicks off against Mercer County at home at 7:30. Limited fans in the stands, so you may want to check it out on the Boyle County's YouTube channel. The game is delivered by the Big Rebel News. They do an awesome job. Jack Little's on the mic over there. He's another new media pioneer, just like I am. Jack, hit me up. I want to have you on the show to talk about what you're doing with Boyle County sports. And I'm just delighted to be able to have a sports item to talk about. Arts Center of the Bluegrass. Don't forget about the 5K, the Run for the Arts 5K that's coming up. Check out artcenterky.org to find out how to participate and get the t-shirt. Also, don't forget that the Investment in Youth Livestock Auction will be happening on Tuesday, September the 8th. That starts at 6 at the Stockyards in Stanford. Need more information on that? Check out episode 20. The organization makes everything easy for you to either buy or participate. You can buy the meat. Your company or organization can buy. A couple of friends or families can go in together to make a purchase. Restaurants can make a purchase, or you can just contribute to the pooled fund and know that your donation makes farming a real possibility for the young people in our community. A Boldly Resilient Pop-Up Cafe tonight. It's Friday, September the 4th in Whizziger Park, brought to you by the Convention and Visitors Bureau, Heart of Danville, the Danville Boyle County Chamber of Commerce, City of Danville. I think that's everybody. All those organizations work together to put together a really cool event. You pick up your dinner from a local restaurant, bring it down to Whizziger Park. The seats are all spaced out. You're out in the fresh air. This is, of course, weather dependent, but they do everything they can to make it a really nice event and as safe as possible. Oh, by the way, this podcast, of course, is underwritten by my real estate brokerage, the Logan Company, but I've consulted with my management team and the production staff, and they feel that I have room for 2 sponsors on each episode, a episode sponsor and a What's Up Danville sponsor. If you or someone you know would like the opportunity to sponsor the most influential and fastest growing podcast in the region, hit me up at ManAboutDanville@gmail.com. Also use that email address, ManAboutDanville@gmail.com, to let me know if you have a sports item, an item to do with the arts in our community, or a not-for-profit organization doing something in our community, and I'll work to get them worked into the What's Up Danville segment. People have been asking, and yes, the Man About Danville can MC your birthday parties, graduation events, rehearsal dinners. I can be your in-ring announcer for boxing or mixed martial arts. Just get in touch. We will work it out. You can find me on my website, ManAboutDanville.com. You can email me. You can find me on Insta, ManAboutDanville, my Twitter handle, @ManDanville, and the Facebook page, Man About Danville. You can listen and find me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and just about anywhere else you listen to podcasts. If you have a moment, hit subscribe wherever you listen. I appreciate those of you that take the time to give me a rating or review. Also, if you have a moment, hit the share button and spread the word through your social media accounts. I appreciate all those. That's good for ratings. Thanks to my guest, Liz Morris. We wish her and both her jockeys all the best in the big race, the Kentucky Derby, tomorrow. That's all I got. Be well. Have a good weekend. And as always, thanks for listening.
That's it. We're out. Thanks so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Subscribe to Man About Danville wherever you access your favorite podcasts, and be sure to tell your friends about us. You've been listening to Man About Danville with Logan H. Gurman, brought to you by the Logan Company, a commercial and residential real estate brokerage for Danville and Central Kentucky. Know someone who would be a good guest? Want to be a guest yourself? Have an idea for the show? Get in touch with us. Find all our contact information on the web at ManAboutDanville.com. Thanks for joining us.